Following reports of 8 deaths and approximately 500 lung illnesses related to vaping, the Trump administration has proposed instituting a federal ban on the sale of electronic cigarettes, and at the state level, individual states have already taken their own actions. Here in New York State, Governor Andrew Cuomo has already instituted an executive emergency ban of 90 days of the sale of flavored electronic cigarettes. A January 2019 report issued by the National Institute on Drug Use found that for the 2018 year, approximately 30% of 12th grade students had reported vaping within the last year. That is the largest recorded increased substance use for any substance in the entire 44 years that this institution has been tracking adolescent drug usage. And with e-cigarette flavors like cotton candy and bubblegum, it's pretty clear that these manufacturers are developing their products with the intent of marketing towards a younger and younger demographic. Knowingly marketing products that contain nicotine, an addictive substance, to children and teenagers to get them hooked on it is already a pretty questionable practice. But the million-dollar question that scientists are looking to answer is, are these electronic cigarettes harmful to human health, physiologically speaking? Now, a couple of important things to note about the cases of illnesses and deaths being reported across the country. It appears that most of them involved the vaping use with marijuana-derived compounds, THC primarily, or CBD. And studying electronic cigarettes and making legal policies about electronic cigarettes that treat them all as if they are the same is not really practical to do. In fact, knowing what's in one product versus another can be really difficult to trace because these electronic cigarettes are not regulated by the Food and Drug Administration in the United States. So the constituents of these oils can vary from product to product quite drastically, making it very, very hard to pinpoint any one specific thing. The New York State Department of Health has investigated vitamin E acetate, which seemed to be kind of common across a lot of these samples that were related to the illnesses. But the Food and Drug Administration has come out and said that they have not ID'd any one singular substance as a commonality across all of the samples. So, figuring out the short-term causes of these illnesses seems to be something that is still out of our stretch of understanding. But what about long-term consequences? Could there be any? And if there are, is there any way we can practically study it? All electronic cigarettes do have some extremely basic common ingredients, and we could start by looking at those commonalities. At its most basic core, electronic cigarettes basically work by dissolving nicotine into a liquid solution that can then be heated by using an electrical source with battery power to convert it into an aerosol form that the user can inhale. So, the most basic ingredients in any electronic cigarette are going to include nicotine, and then some kind of chemical substance that's going to be used as the solvent to dissolve the nicotine. In almost all of the e-cigarettes, the most basic ingredients of this solvent are going to be propylene glycol and vegetable glycerin, both of which are commonly found in a variety of foods and through screening by the FDA have been cleared as generally recognized as safe. However, that GRAS ranking is in terms of their consumption and passage through the digestive tract. Their use as an inhaled aerosol has not been screened by the FDA. So, if we want to keep the science as simple as possible for analyzing these electronic cigarettes, we could, in theory, look at those 3 key ingredients. And Dr. Farah Karadmand at Baylor College of Medicine did exactly that. Dr. Karadmand designed a study using mouse models to look at the effects of long-term chronic exposure to cigarette smoke and also to e-cigarette vapors. This repeated exposure study took place over a 4-month period in the mouse models, which would be comparable to essentially decades of chronic exposure in humans. So we are looking at a very long-term study and long-term consequences. Compared with the control mice that faced no exposure events, the cigarette smoke-exposed mice did show signs of emphysema. That's in addition to the known carcinogenic effect of tobacco products, which contain chemical mutagens that can mutate your DNA and cause cancers to form. Now, as expected, this did not occur in the groups of mice that were exposed to the e-cigarette vapors. So that is good news, and that's a plus. However, the researchers did find something they didn't expect in this group of mice that were being exposed to the electronic cigarette vapors. The immune cells in their lungs were becoming clogged with excessive deposits of fat. Now, this group of mice was further subdivided into two separate categories, one containing nicotine and one without nicotine, containing only the solvent, the propylene glycol and the vegetable glycerin. And they found that these excessive fat deposits occurred in both groups, suggesting that nicotine wasn't actually the culprit, it was the solvent. So in this figure published from their research, you can actually see in the upper panels that compared to the mouse groups that were exposed to simple air or to cigarette smoke, the mice that were exposed to the electronic cigarettes, either containing nicotine or not containing nicotine, both groups had these translucent bodies that appeared in their white blood cells or their macrophages found in the alveoli of their lungs. You can see that in the upper panels indicated by the black arrows and those translucent circles. And in the lower panels, we have an oil red O staining to showcase lipid accumulation, and you can see that, again, compared to the mice exposed to simply air or cigarette smoke, the mice that were exposed to the vapors from e-cigarettes contained these bioaccumulation of lipids inside of those translucent bodies. Because it is immune cells of the lungs that seem to be being affected by these vapors, the scientists wanted to do further research and see if there's a consequence of this physiological change. Is the immune system being impaired by the smoking of these vapors? So these mouse groups were then infected with the influenza A virus, and their immune response and recoveries were documented and recorded. And again, compared to the control mice that were simply exposed to air, the mice exposed to the e-cigarette vapors, both with and without nicotine, had reduced survival rates, as you can see in this graphic, over that 10-day period post-infection. These altered white blood cells in the ENS-exposed mice had impaired expression of critical immune molecules and cytokines, and as a consequence, they weren't really able to clear the influenza infection. Now, this is a study on mouse models. Not the same thing as studying humans, but vaping is a relatively new trend. It only really got mainstream popularity in the last couple of years, and so we don't really have humans that have been vaping for decades to study and analyze these effects. And these findings could present a possibility that downstream these individuals might be facing some severe immune system impairments. And this is information that is valuable to know. This is an extremely interesting study, and I believe that people have a right to be as informed as possible when they're making decisions about what things they're going to purchase or get involved in. I'm not really interested in making a case for banning e-cigarettes or for supporting their sale. But if you are someone who uses e-cigarettes or have thought about it or know somebody who uses electronic cigarettes, this might be information that you want exposure to. Thank you guys for watching and stay inquisitive. Bye, you guys.